Solve
So the
this,
unified
and
field
$500
theory
million
clearly
is
indicates
yours.
a paradigm
Hiroko
shift
Nakamura's
in our quantum
voice cracked
entanglement
like a
model
whip
if we
across the
just
glittering university atrium. The chandeliers trembled in their crystal cages as her words ricocheted off marble walls. Guests froze. Cameras lifted. Professors straightened in their tuxedos. Students shifted nervously in their gowns. But Hiroko's gaze didn't linger on the celebrated. Scientists or Nobel laureates seated in the front. Row. No. Her diamond ringed. Finger leveled like a blade toward the far corner at a man crouched with a mop, wringing water into a gray bucket. Marcus Johnson, the janitor. Hiroko's lips curled into a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. Or maybe, she purred, her accent laced with venom, you'd rather keep scrubbing floors. Gasps broke the silence. Then laughter. Nervous, scattered at first, then rolling louder as people glanced around, unsure if this was a performance or humiliation dressed as entertainment. Phones tilted upward, recording the moment. Whispered comments slithered through the crowd. Did she just... She's humiliating the janitor. Oh my God, she's serious. And there he was, Marcus, the man with calloused hands and a faded uniform that smelled faintly of bleach. His mop leaned against his shoulder like a soldier's staff. His face betrayed nothing. Not shame, not anger, not fear. Only stillness. His dark eyes studied Hiroko the way a hawk studies a serpent. Silent, patient, dangerous. No one in the crowd knew that once. He had stood in front of lecture halls, chalk dust on his fingertips, solving equations most minds couldn't even read. No one knew that behind the janitor's badge lived the same man newspapers had once called America's next great mathematician. No one knew that the mop was camouflage, and that beneath it beat the mind of Dr. Marcus Johnson, a sidelined prodigy, but Hiroko didn't see a mind. She saw only a man bent over her floor, useful for scrubbing, not for thinking. And she wanted to make an example of him. Come on, she pressed, pacing toward him, her heels striking the marble like gunshots. Show us. Unless, of course, this problem is too big for your mop bucket. The laughter sharpened. Professors averted their eyes, unwilling to intervene. Some students squirmed in their seats. Others, phones raised, whispered eagerly, "This is going viral." Marcus straightened slowly, releasing the mop from his grip. He didn't move toward her. He didn't answer her taunts. He simply stood, broad-shouldered, calm and terrifying in his silence. That silence unsettled the room. One young student muttered under her breath, "Careful. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you." But Hiroko didn't hear. She was too busy basking in the glow of her own arrogance, and the narrator's voice sliced through the laughter, cold and prophetic. They thought it was harmless mockery, but within moments their laughter would turn into stunned silence. Marcus Johnson had never known an easy path. His earliest memories weren't of toys or laughter, but of his mother's tired hands scrubbing countertops in the diner where she worked double shifts. She raised him alone in a neighborhood where opportunity was a rumor, not a reality. Every dollar counted. Every light bill was a battle. And yet, she pressed on, telling her son the same thing every night when she tucked him in with weary eyes, "You are not the sum of your circumstances. You are the sum of what you dare to dream." Marcus carried those words like armor. At school, while others mocked his hand-me-down shoes or the way his lunch came in paper bags reused 3 times, he solved puzzles no one else could touch. Teachers whispered about him, but the world didn't care. He wasn't rich. He wasn't connected. He was just a black kid from the wrong side of town. And yet, while others saw a mop, Marcus saw numbers, patterns, equations, structures that lived inside his head long after the world had turned its back on him. His grandfather, Isaiah Johnson, gave him the spark that never went out. Isaiah had been a Cold War codebreaker, a man who wrestled secrets from enemy transmissions using nothing but pencil, paper, and relentless grit. The old man's stories fascinated Marcus. Nights bent over radios, scribbling codes, unraveling mysteries that others thought impossible. Isaiah's mantra became Marcus's heartbeat. Dignity doesn't shout, it waits. Then it roars. Even when dementia began to cloud Isaiah's memory, those words came out clear, like they were engraved on his soul. For a time, Marcus believed he was destined to roar. He earned scholarships, climbed into the rarefied air of graduate study, and dazzled his professors with proofs that bent logic into beauty. His notebooks overflowed with scribbled symbols that looked chaotic but unfolded into symphonies of mathematics. Colleagues called him a prodigy. He believed them. For once, life seemed to be giving him the stage his mind deserved. But life has a cruel way of breaking momentum. His mother fell ill, hospital bills drowned him, and funding cuts at the university pulled the rug from under him. Then came the family tragedies, the kind that strip ambition until survival becomes the only equation you can solve. One by one, doors closed. His brilliance didn't pay the rent. His notebooks didn't keep the lights on. And so Marcus Johnson, once called the future of American mathematics, became Marcus Johnson, the janitor, mopping the same university halls where he had once lectured, emptying the trash of men who quoted his ideas without even knowing it. At night, in his cramped apartment, he still worked. Spiral notebooks towered on his table, scrawled with equations, diagrams, and faint stains from cheap coffee. His dreams hadn't died. They had only been buried under the weight of necessity. Each line of math he wrote was a whisper to himself. I am still here. I am still capable. Meanwhile, Hiroko Nakamura lived in another world entirely. Where Marcus had silence, she had spotlights. Where he had debt, she had diamonds. She ruled her empire not just with wealth, but with cruelty, a deliberate cruelty designed to remind people of their place. Her parties, her galas, her meetings were theaters of dominance. She mocked, insulted, humiliated, and the people around her laughed. They laughed not because they found her funny, but because they feared what silence might cost them. Phones captured every moment of her power games, and those clips spread like wildfire. Hiroko humiliates rival CEO. Hiroko crushes a professor's theory in public. For her, humiliation was branding, and now, at this university gala, she had chosen Marcus as her target. Not because he threatened her, not because he challenged her, but because he was invisible. Easy prey. A janitor in a faded uniform pushing a mop across her polished marble floor. In Hiroko's eyes, that made him perfect to feed her hunger for spectacle. Yet, as Marcus stood in the corner, the chalkboard looming behind Hiroko with its impossible equation scrawled across it, something stirred within him. He could feel his grandfather's voice, steady and unyielding, echoing inside his chest. Dignity doesn't shout. It waits, then it roars. His eyes locked on the symbols written in white chalk. For everyone else, they were walls, barriers, an unsolvable fortress of math. But for Marcus, they were doors. Doors he had walked through in his mind 100 times before. When no one was watching, when he was alone with his notebooks and his stubborn, unyielding will, he didn't answer Hiroko's taunts. He didn't defend himself from the laughter. Instead, he simply stared at the board, calm and unreadable. Around him, laughter swelled, cruel and careless. But inside Marcus, something else swelled too. The roar his grandfather had promised was coming, and when it came, the world would never forget. The laughter rolled like thunder through the atrium, feeding Hiroko Nakamura's pride as if the crowd itself were her instrument. She stood in the center of the marble stage, diamond bracelet flashing as her manicured hand swept toward Marcus Johnson like she was conducting an orchestra of mockery. "What's the matter, mop boy?" She pressed, her tone sickly sweet, sharpened with venom. "Numbers too big for your bucket? Or are you saving your brain power for polishing floors?" The audience erupted. Students howled with laughter, their phones tilted high to capture the humiliation. A group of investors leaned back in their seats, smirking like spectators at a cruel sport. The mockery wasn't just entertainment anymore, it was performance. Carefully staged by Hiroko to remind everyone who held the power in the room. But Marcus did not flinch. He stood with his broad shoulders straight, one hand still loosely gripping the mop handle, the other resting at his side. His dark eyes never left the chalkboard, where impossible symbols coiled across the slate like riddles written by the universe itself. He didn't look at Hiroko. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the problem, and the silence unsettled them. "Say something, janitor." Hiroko barked, her voice bouncing against the vaulted ceiling. Or is silence the only answer you know? A ripple of laughter followed, sharper now, tinged with cruelty. Yet, in the back rows, not everyone was laughing. A young professor with glasses perched nervously on his nose leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "Careful. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you." His words went unheard by most, drowned beneath the roar of the crowd, but the camera of a nearby student caught it. Every phone in the room was rolling, capturing not just Hiroko's cruelty but every reaction, the cheers, the unease, the uncomfortable shifting of those who wondered if this was going too far. Hiroko's heels clicked as she advanced closer. She circled Marcus like a predator testing its prey. "You know, it's funny," she said loudly, ensuring every microphone picked it up. "I came here tonight to honor brilliance, to celebrate the future of mathematics. And yet, here you are. A man who couldn't even hold on to his career. Reduced to a mop." She tilted her head, smirking. "Tell me, do you ever calculate how many tiles you've scrubbed? Or is that too advanced for you?" The laughter this time was crueler. People clapped, some even whistled, emboldened by Hiroko's venom. The mockery had become a contest. Who could laugh the loudest, who could record the sharpest insult, who could ride the wave of Hiroko's arrogance without being pulled under. But Marcus still said nothing. Instead, he studied the board, his gaze moving slowly across the chalked lines, his mind tracing the architecture of the problem. The laughter was noise, irrelevant, the way thunder is irrelevant when lightning has already struck. His silence wasn't weakness. It was power, and some people felt it. In the third row, an older trustee frowned, his arms crossed, watching Marcus with an intensity that cut through the noise. A student lowered her phone, suddenly unsure if this was something to record or something to remember. Even among the professors, unease rippled, shame flickering in their eyes as they realized how easily they had become complicit in the spectacle. But Hiroko was relentless. "Still nothing?" she taunted, tapping the chalkboard with a polished fingernail. "I'll give you a hint. Start with the first line." "Oh, wait. Do you even know how to read equations, or do you only read the labels on cleaning supplies?" Another wave of laughter, another eruption of noise, but beneath it, the tension grew thick, unspoken, undeniable. Marcus's stillness was too deliberate, too calm. The janitor wasn't cowering. He wasn't shrinking. He wasn't breaking. He was waiting. And Hiroko, blinded by her arrogance, mistook his silence for surrender. "Pathetic," she muttered, turning back to the crowd. "This, ladies and gentlemen, is the perfect example of wasted potential. Some people belong in the spotlight. Others," she flicked her wrist dismissively toward Marcus, "belong with a mop." Gasps this time, not from cruelty but from discomfort. The line had been crossed, and the sharpness of her arrogance left an aftertaste bitter even for those who enjoyed the show. Phones recorded every word, every sneer, every flick of her wrist. The ridicule was permanent now, stamped into the digital memory of the world. Marcus finally moved. He released the mop and let it rest against the wall. Slowly, deliberately, he straightened to his full height. The crowd hushed, their laughter caught in their throats as his presence shifted the air. He did not speak. He did not look at Hiroko. He simply turned his head and let his eyes return to the chalkboard. And in that silence, a different kind of tension filled the room. The kind of tension before a storm. The kind of tension that makes even the arrogant pause. A student whispered shakily, "Why does it feel like he's about to do something?" The cameras kept rolling. The whispers grew. Some still laughed nervously, but their voices trembled. The show had changed, though most didn't realize it yet. For Marcus, it wasn't about Hiroko anymore. It wasn't about the laughter or the humiliation. It was about the problem, about the shapes unfolding in his mind, the geometry his grandfather had taught him to see, the patterns no one else in the room could trace. The roar was coming, and when it broke, the world would remember this night not for Hiroko Nakamura's cruelty, but for the janitor who answered her mockery with brilliance. "Show us then." Hiroko Nakamura spat, her words like venom. She pivoted sharply, heels cracking against marble, her diamond bracelet glittering in the light. "Or admit you're just a floor sweeper." The crowd stirred. Heads turned. A wave of murmurs spread across the atrium. Some smirked, eager for blood. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure if they were witnessing entertainment or cruelty. Marcus Johnson did not move right away. His hand lingered on the mop handle, strong fingers gripping it loosely. He looked at the chalkboard the way a soldier looks at a battlefield, measuring it, absorbing it, already knowing where the cracks lay. His silence stretched into eternity. "Come on, Janitor." Hiroko pressed, her voice dripping with scorn. "The stage is yours. Impress us." Gasps, whispers, and stifled laughter filled the air. Phones hovered higher. No one wanted to miss the fall of the man standing at the edge of mockery. Marcus inhaled slowly. Then, with deliberate calm, he set the mop against the wall. The gesture was simple, almost casual, but in the silence that followed, it landed like a declaration. The weight of humiliation had been laid aside. He walked toward the chalkboard, not rushed, not frantic, steady, powerful. Each step echoed in the vaulted atrium like a drumbeat heralding change. The closer he came, the quieter the room grew. Even the laughter faltered. Curiosity replacing cruelty. Marcus reached the board, lifted a piece of chalk, and held it between his calloused fingers. For a moment, he simply stood there, studying the tangle of equations sprawled across the slate. To most, they looked like chaos, impossible conjectures written in cryptic symbols. But to Marcus, they were not chaos. They were patterns waiting to be seen. Then he began. He didn't scribble wildly. He didn't attack the problem with brute force. Instead, his hand moved with precision, with elegance, like a conductor guiding an orchestra. He drew a hexagon, then another interlocking with the first. Slowly, deliberately, he mapped out symmetries hidden inside the fortress of numbers. Circles connected, angles aligned. Transformations unfolded as if the chalk itself had been waiting for his hand. The crowd fell into a stunned hush. "What? What's he doing?" a student whispered. Another leaned forward, eyes wide. "He's reframing it, geometry. He's turning equations into shapes." Professors who had once averted their eyes now leaned in, transfixed. Investors lowered their glasses. Students stopped laughing and craned their necks. The janitor was drawing maps of truth no one had ever dared imagine. And still, Marcus said nothing. His silence was louder than any boast. On the board, the fortress cracked. Line by line, symbol by symbol, the impossible melted into order. Where once stood chaos, now stood symmetry. Where once loomed a wall, now shone a doorway. Phones zoomed closer, lenses shaking in disbelief. He's actually solving it," someone whispered, their voice trembling. Gasps echoed like ripples. Marcus's hand moved faster now, confidence blooming. His face remained calm, his focus absolute. He wasn't just solving the problem. He was transforming it into art. The conjecture collapsed beneath his touch, revealing its elegant skeleton, as if it had always been waiting for him alone. A professor shot to his feet, voice cracking. This is genius." Another clutched his head, staring in disbelief. "It's impossible. It's beautiful." Marcus stepped back at last. The chalk dangled loose in his hand. On the board, the proof stood complete. Shapes and lines interwoven into a tapestry of truth that no one could deny. The silence shattered. The atrium erupted into chaos. Gasps, shouts, cheers, the furious clicking of cameras. Students stood on their chairs to get a better view. Professors whispered furiously, some near tears. Investors muttered to each other, suddenly realizing what they had just witnessed. The janitor? No, not a janitor. He solved it. My God, he solved it. Hiroko stumbled forward, her perfect posture unraveling. Her eyes darted between the board and Marcus, her lips trembling. "No," she hissed. "This isn't possible. He must have stolen it. Plagiarism. That's the only explanation." But in her panic, she revealed too much. "He's using structures I've only ever seen in classified archives," she blurted. "Those patterns, they're Cold War encryptions. No ordinary man could—" The words froze in her throat. The professors stiffened. Trustees turned sharply toward her. Investors exchanged uneasy glances. Classified archives? Why would a corporate CEO know about Cold War encryptions unless her company had been exploiting stolen knowledge? She realized too late what she had admitted. The silence that followed was deadly. And then an older trustee rose slowly from his seat, his face stern, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, gesturing toward Marcus, "you have just witnessed history. The room erupted in applause. It wasn't polite clapping. It was thunder, cheers, whistles, hands pounding together until the walls shook. Students screamed with joy. Professors who had once ignored Marcus's presence now clapped until their palms burned. Investors who had smirked now leaned forward, hungry to be associated with the brilliance they had dismissed. Hiroko staggered back, pale, trembling. Her empire of cruelty crumbled in seconds. No one looked at her anymore. No one laughed at her jokes. Their eyes belonged to Marcus. Their respect belonged to him. Marcus turned then, calm and unshaken, and finally let his voice fill the room. "Respect," he said, each word measured, deliberate. The applause softened, straining to catch every syllable. "Respect is the only universal currency. And tonight," he paused, letting the silence carry the weight of his words, "you're bankrupt." The line struck like lightning. The room exploded with cheers, applause echoing like thunderclaps. Students leapt to their feet. Professors nodded furiously, some wiping tears from their eyes. Phones captured the moment, hashtags already flooding social media. But Marcus wasn't finished. He stepped forward, closing the space between himself and Hiroko, his gaze steady, unyielding. 500 million, he said softly, yet every word carried across the atrium. "You promised it in front of everyone, and I will hold you to your word." Silence crushed Hiroko. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Cameras caught every flicker of panic in her eyes, every tremor in her lips. The woman who had mocked a janitor now stood exposed, powerless, her empire shaken by her own arrogance. Marcus did not smile. He did not gloat. He stood in dignity, his grandfather's mantra echoing in his heart. Dignity doesn't shout, it waits. Then it roars, and tonight his roar had shaken the world. The applause raged on, rolling like waves. In every corner of the atrium, people knew they had witnessed something unforgettable. The janitor had become the genius. The mocked had become the master. The silent man had delivered truth with thunder. Hiroko Nakamura had tried to humiliate him. Instead, she had crowned him, and nothing would ever be the same again. The applause thundered until the marble floor itself seemed to vibrate with it. But beneath the roar, other currents were already moving, currents that spelled the undoing of Hiroko Nakamura. Investors leaned toward one another in hushed tones, their polished faces suddenly tight with unease. Some frowned, tapping at phones to send quick, urgent messages. Others crossed their arms, glancing at Hiroko with the kind of cold calculation that spelled distance. She had been their queen an hour ago. Now she was a liability. Professors, once complicit in silence, now looked at each other with shame and awe. Their eyes flicked toward Marcus, some with regret for not recognizing him, others with newfound respect, even envy. Their whispers floated like smoke through the atrium. "Dr. Johnson, is it really him? God, I remember his papers. He was brilliant even back then. How did we not see it? How did we let him fall this far?" The stage that had belonged to Hiroko was now Marcus's. He hadn't asked for it, hadn't demanded it, but the moment clung to him like destiny finally claiming its rightful heir. Then a voice rang out, clear and commanding. A senior trustee, gray-haired, his suit immaculate, stepped forward from the front row. He didn't bow to Hiroko. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on Marcus. "Dr. Johnson," he said, his words carrying the weight of an institution. "On behalf of this university, I would like to personally offer to fund your research. Not just tonight, not as a gesture, but as a commitment. The world needs your mind, and we will not ignore it any longer." For a moment, silence returned. And then the atrium erupted again, this time not with nervous laughter, but with cheers. Students screamed and clapped. Professors rose to their feet. Even some investors, eager to attach themselves to the rising sun, applauded with vigor. Marcus didn't raise his hands. He didn't bow. He simply stood tall, calm, his expression unreadable, though in his chest his heart pounded with a mix of relief, triumph, and disbelief. He had not expected this. He had not asked for it. Yet it was his. Hiroko staggered back, her painted lips trembling. She had been erased from her own stage. Reporters in the crowd, who had come expecting quotes and spectacle, were already typing furiously on their devices. Their headlines were writing themselves. CEO humiliated by janitor genius. Hiroko Nakamura's gala turns into downfall. Dr. Marcus Johnson reclaims his voice. Every camera lens pivoted away from Hiroko. She was invisible now, reduced to background noise while the world focused on the man she had tried to bury. Marcus, for the first time all night, allowed himself to step back from the storm. He slipped away from the stage, through the side doors, into the cool night air. Outside, the university courtyard glowed under street lamps. The noise of the gala was muted, replaced by the sound of leaves rustling and the faint hum of the city beyond. He pulled his phone from his pocket. His hands, strong and steady on the chalkboard, trembled now as he dialed the number that mattered most. The line clicked. A familiar, weary voice answered. "Marcus, baby, is everything all right?" He swallowed, his throat tightening. "Mama, you're not going to believe what just happened." His voice broke into a laugh, half disbelief, half release. He told her everything in fragments. The challenge, the board, the proof, the applause. On the other end, silence. Then a soft, choked whisper. "You didn't just win, baby." Her voice trembled with pride and tears. "You made them listen." Marcus closed his eyes, the weight of years pressing against him, and for the first time, the burden lifted. His mother's words were more valuable than the applause, the promises, even the 500 million. He had carried her sacrifices in his bones his entire life. Tonight, he had honored them. Back inside, the story was already spreading. Reporters crowded the exits, phones buzzing with breaking alerts. Social media lit up with clips of the moment Marcus had said, "Respect is the only universal currency." Hashtags erupted. Janitor genius. Respect is currency, Marcus Johnson and Hiroko. Nakamura tried to push through the swarm, but microphones and cameras turned away. The queen of cruelty was invisible. Investors whispered about distancing. Professors spoke of inquiries. And students recorded her slinking into the shadows. Her name would be in the headlines too, but not as the victor she had always pretended to be. Marcus Johnson had not just solved a problem. He had rewritten the balance of power in a single night, and as he slipped his phone back into his pocket, his mother's voice echoing in his heart, he knew the roar his grandfather promised had finally shaken the world awake. The days that followed the gala were a storm. The story of Marcus Johnson spread like wildfire across television screens, news columns, and social media feeds. What began as a cruel attempt to humiliate a janitor transformed into a global reckoning. Clips of the moment. Marcus set down his mop and turned to the board, flooded every platform. Millions replayed the silence before his first stroke of chalk, the hexagons interlocking with elegant precision. The final words that cut through Hiroko Nakamura's empire. "Respect is the only universal currency. And tonight, you're bankrupt." The phrase became more than a line. It became a movement. Hashtags trended in dozens of languages. Respect is currency. Janitor genius, Marcus Johnson. Students spray-painted the words across campus walls. Protesters in other cities carried signs with his face, demanding opportunity for overlooked communities. Even late-night hosts quoted him, calling the line the mic drop of the decade. For Marcus, the sudden attention was overwhelming, but instead of retreating, he chose to build. Within months, with the support of trustees and philanthropists now eager to invest in his brilliance, Marcus launched a research institute in his name, dedicated not just to advanced mathematics, but to mentoring and elevating underprivileged youth who, like him, had been overlooked. The institute's motto was simple: "Genius can wear any uniform." He returned to the chalkboard, but not as the silent janitor mocked by a billionaire. Now he stood as Dr. Marcus Johnson, leading seminars, publishing groundbreaking papers, and opening doors for those who would have been invisible. Students flocked to him, not just for his brilliance but for the quiet strength in his story. He became a voice, a reminder that intellect was not bound by wealth, title, or privilege. Meanwhile, Hiroko Nakamura's world collapsed. Investors who once clung to her name like a crown jewel now abandoned her, citing unacceptable behavior and reputational damage. She became infamous not for her billions, but for her arrogance. The clip of her sneering "mop boy" circulated endlessly, paired with Marcus's calm response. She was memed mercilessly. One viral image showed her pointing at Marcus with the caption, "Clean this equation for me." Another stitched her laughter into a soundtrack that cut off the moment Marcus unveiled the solution. Her empire became a cautionary tale, her name synonymous with arrogance and downfall. The university, stung by its complicity, scrambled to repair its image. Professors who had looked away were forced into statements. Leaders convened emergency meetings. The result was a sweeping reform: a scholarship fund for overlooked talents, mentorship programs for working-class students, and a public commitment that brilliance would never again be buried under janitorial uniforms. When the scholarships were announced, Marcus was asked to speak. He stood at the same podium where Hiroko had once sneered at him. The applause that welcomed him was deafening. His speech was brief, but every word carried weight. "Tonight, let this not be about me, but about the countless others whose voices have been ignored. Genius lives in every corner. Dignity waits in silence. And when we listen, truly listen, we all rise." The moment sealed his transformation. No longer was Marcus just the man who shocked a gala. He was a leader, a teacher, a builder of legacies, and his story continued to ripple. Schools played his speech in classrooms. Parents told their children about him. Young people scribbled equations in notebooks, daring to dream beyond their circumstances because Marcus had proven it was possible. For Hiroko, the silence was deafening. For Marcus, the roar had only just begun. They laughed at a man with a mop, forgetting that genius doesn't wear a title. In one night, their empire of arrogance collapsed, while his dignity rose like a flame that could not be extinguished. Marcus Johnson reminded the world of something timeless. Brilliance cannot be buried by circumstance, nor mocked into silence. It waits, quietly, patiently, and when the moment comes, it roars. His proof was more than mathematics. It was a testament that true worth cannot be bought, mocked, or hidden. Hiroko Nakamura believed power lived in wealth and cruelty. But in the end, the only power that mattered was respect. And respect belongs to those who earn it, not those who demand it. From janitor to genius, from silence to symphony, Marcus's story is proof that dignity is the strongest currency of all. And now, that lesson is yours. If you believe respect is the only universal currency, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove dignity always wins. Because sometimes the quiet ones change the world.